Video game adaptations! Created to fulfill two purposes, which is marketing a franchise and fan service to casual enjoyers and fans alike. And I'm here to answer, why is adaptation a dominant strategy in film/media production, and why does it suggest an absence of originality? First off, what is an adaptation? Well, by definition, the process of making a work of art upon the basis of elements provided by an earlier work in a different medium. There are many examples of modern media culture being based around adapting previous sources too. For example, Cyberpunk released an original show called Cyberpunk Edgerunners that outperformed the player base, which stands at 26,000 at the time of recording. Meanwhile, Edgerunners has over 14.88 million hours of watch time, drastically increasing sales of Cyberpunk, which saved the game and fanbase as a whole. Jumanji had several iterations, starting with a children's book written by Chris Van Allsburg in 1981 about a board game coming to life. Years later in 1995, the original Jumanji movie came to theaters, and even later in 2017, they adapted yet again to change from the board game theme to the protagonist being trapped in a video game instead. As you can see, there are several franchises that had their own movies, and if you think about it, there's almost no original content left because it's probably based off of or adapted from another source that's very similar. And when I think of the franchise that has tons of diverse media, I naturally think of the largest franchise in the entire world, Pokémon. Pokémon is most well known for its games and the Pokémon anime. With a total of 39 mainline games excluding spin-offs, this is a game franchise that has some of the most diverse world building ever made. Game Freak and Nintendo realized Pokémon Red and Blue was a huge hit in 1996, and they were smart to capitalize off of it by creating the original Pokémon anime, released on April 1st, 1997. In these games, you, the main protagonist, travel your home region capturing Pokémon, monsters that can fit in your own pocket, and your goal is to catch these Pokémon, battle them against other trainers, and become the strongest Pokémon trainer in the entire region. Relatively simple story, and because of this simplicity, it was easy to add more. The main protagonist is a blank slate character, meaning they're a character that you can project yourself onto in the Pokemon world. However, when it came down to the anime, that blank slate had to be replaced because that format simply wouldn't work. So to fill in for the lack of personality, they created one of the most iconic faces and names in not only Pokemon, but throughout the entire world. And his name is Ash Ketchum. In the first season of the anime, they portrayed the Pokemon world extremely differently to the games, due to the limited hardware and software of the consoles and the games themselves. So, the producers and the writers of the anime simply interpreted on what the games were meant to be. This is the creators toying with the fidelity of the source material. Fidelity refers to the degree to which an adaptation remains faithful to the source. Research suggests that strict fidelity to the source material can limit the creative possibilities in adaptation. Meanwhile, others state that faithfulness to the original product is essential to preserving the original feeling of that work. Thankfully for the Pokemon anime, the writers instead stayed faithful to the game's simple story and world structure. To give an example, you can see Pokemon in the wilderness inhabiting areas like animals in the real world, as opposed to walking into a patch of grass and encountering a random Pokemon. More notably, the Pokemon battles are depicted as cinematic and movie-like compared to the strategic turn-based combat of the Pokemon games. Now, the battles have the Pokemon physically hitting each other with the moves, visible damage, and free range of movement around the arenas. This was made even more apparent when Ash developed his unpredictable style of battling, utilizing his surroundings in his advantage. The gameplay was very linear, with a storyline that had the player going from point A to point B, facing puzzles and challenges along the way. The gym leaders, Brock and Misty, were simply meant to be early-level boss fights in Pokemon Red and Blue. However, the producers made the decision to have the duo be Ash's companions as well as support figures during his journey across Kanto and Johto. By doing this, they gave the characters crucial roles as not only friends but exposition roles. In short, Pokemon is a pioneering example in the US of the media mix marketing strategy. This is a strategy developed in the 1960s by E. Jerome McCarthy, and the strategy consists of 5 sections. And looking at the examples I've shown previously, The Pokémon franchise has successfully achieved all 5, especially through promotion via the Pokémon anime. They created the product at a set price for the target audience/fans to enjoy and have fun with, but in order to spread more of the franchise, they needed more promotion, distribution, and accessibility. Therefore, the solution to this is to create the Pokémon anime to further elaborate and promote the games. Since this is an anime being broadcasted across countries, the language barrier was crossed for all fans to understand and enjoy. It produced 26 seasons, 1,305 episodes, 23 movies, boosting its net worth over $100 billion, and it has become one of the most successful shows and franchises of all time. See, where Pokémon succeeded with creating the anime to advertise its games, Dragon Ball did the opposite, with creating games to advertise the anime instead. The work of the late Akira Toriyama's Dragon Ball is a treasured franchise. It was an influential show depicting the main protagonist, Son Goku, and his path to power to fight for his friends, family, and the whole universe. The original Dragon Ball manga was published in Japan on November 20th, 1984. Inspired by Jackie Chan's movies, more specifically the movie Drunken Master, Toriyama set out to draw a one-shot shonen manga titled Dragon Boy in 1983. After the success of Dragon Boy, Toriyama decided to invest time and effort into expanding more of the fictional work, all while not wanting it to feel like his previous work, Dr. Slump. So, once again, Akira Toriyama took inspiration from the Chinese folklore Journey to the West, basically as a foundation for the rest of the story to come. From this point onwards, Akira Toriyama kept expanding and growing the world of Dragon Ball even further beyond. It brought anime to the Western world just like Pokémon and modernized anime to everyone around the globe. And since then, numerous arcs were played out featuring iconic battles with even more iconic characters, stretching from the planet-threatening Saiyan saga, eventually reaching multiversal collapse in the Tournament of Power, and broke the internet. The sheer range and hype of Dragon Ball is phenomenal. It's even still standing today as one of the most pivotal corners of global culture, especially for creators, artists, animators, storytellers, and game designers. Where Pokémon created an anime to promote the games as a marketing strategy, Dragon Ball developed games to feel as cinematic as the source show. The best way to convey these moments are in cutscenes. A cutscene is a cinematic sequence that suspends gameplay to showcase plot, characterization, or action, usually in the form of realistic camera movement. Well, that kind of spectacle is what Dragon Ball's animation is all about. We see this concept best represented in Dragon Ball Z Kakarot, released on the 16th of January 2020. DBZ Kakarot is an RPG fighting game. This installment is most known for the cinematic cutscenes of Dragon Ball's high-quality modernized versions of the Z storyline. This game includes fast-paced fights and pays homage to how the characters in Dragon Ball should fight, which is ferocious blows landing with a force large enough to wipe out a continent. It perfectly mixes the want to play as your favorite characters whilst revisiting major plot points from the show. It's an interactive long-term experience for all Dragon Ball fans to play. But this also comes with some downsides. See, if you have a franchise woven so tightly into Japanese and global pop culture, there comes the issue of repetitiveness and unoriginality within the games. You don't exactly feel the stress of Goku fighting Frieza anymore, because you know he's going to turn Super Saiyan at the end. You just lose the magic at that point. It's predictable, and the intensity of the conflicts has reduced significantly. But where the Dragon Ball games lost identity and story, it gained a new sense for innovation and expressiveness in its gameplay. By reducing the narrative focus and improving on Dragon Ball's combat and movement, they created something unrepeatable, all while sticking with the source reference. This is shown the best with the game critically acclaimed as one of the best Dragon Ball games ever made, Dragon Ball FighterZ. Quote, "In a non-narrative competitive game, repetition is actually a part of the basic design, and is intended as part of a process of learning and skill definition. The truth is, repetition isn't bad for games, it's bad for the narrative." Dragon Ball FighterZ, developed by Arc System Works, developed FighterZ with the traditional one-on-one Street Fighter-esque combat system, a battle format with a high skill ceiling, combo potential, and diverse playstyles, allowing for the player to feel like they're in the show or movies themselves, akin to Dragon Ball Z Kakarot. This led Dragon Ball fans to be entertained without the repetitiveness of the Z storyline, all while experiencing the characters to fight in all manner of play. The nature of this game pushed it to being a major competitive esport, being featured in EVO 2018, 2019, 2021, 2022, 2023, and 2024. And in the end, it remains not just one of the best Dragon Ball games ever, but one of the best fighting games of all time. In conclusion, the Pokemon games created the anime to market the games. However, due to the linear and simplistic design of the games, they had the creative freedom to expand upon its world, characters, and interactions through visual storytelling of the Pokemon anime. This was a cultural phenomenon as its publications spread the Pokemon franchise worldwide, and was an influence to modern pop culture, appealing not only to children anymore, but attracting all types of people. On the other hand, the Dragon Ball games have lost their sense of originality due to the repetitive nature of the narrative. So to compensate for the overuse of the Dragon Ball archetypes, they instead focused on innovating gameplay aspects to better represent the distinctive style of fast-paced, powerful battles and attempting to design something new out of it. Kakarot's focal point being the narrative, and FighterZ expanded upon its gameplay and its player base. While these examples I gave are different, they adapted to their audience to go even further beyond and became the very best like no one ever was.